Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and today on the channel we're going to be taking a look at Pandemic Shooter on the Nintendo Switch. Now, as you can probably tell, this one's a first-person zombie shooter in which you're tasked with combating a zombie invasion, so pretty much the standard theme of every zombie game ever. And the Switch has already got its fair share of zombie games, most of which I have to say are a bag of shite, but how does Pandemic Shooter shape up against them, and is it worth your time and cash? Well, hit that like button, subscribe for more Switch reviews and content, and let's find out. So as I alluded to in the intro, at its core, Pandemic Shooter's storyline falls in line with every other zombie game you've ever played, and it essentially sees you playing as a member of a team tasked with fighting back a zombie invasion. Where this one differs, however, is that its zombie apocalypse was not caused by some kind of human-created virus, and instead is the result of a lizard-like race of aliens who somehow appear to crawl up inside of humans to infect them. Now, the storyline is presented in two parts, which both play out each time you complete a level. The first of these being from the perspective of the lizards, where we observe them plotting the next move against the human race, and each of their schemes involves a different kind of conspiracy theory, which includes things like flat earthers, mind-controlling vaccines, and 5G as they attempt to confuse the population, spreading misinformation and putting doubt in the minds. The second part of the storyline follows the team on the ground who are actually combating the zombie hordes and experiencing and commenting on the effects of the conspiracies firsthand. Now, while the alien lizard sections contain nothing but guttural sounds and slurping noises, which if you're wearing headphones can be a little unpleasant to listen to, the ground team's ones are actually fully voiced, and the voice acting in the game is actually pretty decent. The story, however, despite it attempting to be a little more original with its approach to the whole zombie apocalypse thing, unfortunately has very little impact on the gameplay itself, and as you're about to see, this could have really made a difference, but as it is, it's a wonder why they actually spent the time on such an adventurous storyline and the money on implementing the voice acting. So gameplay in this one then, and I'm not going to beat about the bush here, as it's incredibly disappointing in both the premise and execution of it, as well as the game's basic mechanics. Now, Pandemic Shooter offers only a single player campaign mode consisting of 8 different levels, and a single player endless mode unlocked after completing these levels, which I'll be honest I never actually unlocked, nor did I want to after experiencing its campaign. Now, each of these levels sees you following a winding road surrounded by buildings, which usually has a couple of small shortcuts between the buildings, but only a singular start and end point, and as you follow this single road, zombies will continually spawn ahead of you, which you need to take out in order to progress forwards, or so you would think this would be the case, as in fact you can actually totally ignore every single enemy on your long walk to the level's end point, and instead fight them in the same area in which the boss spawns. The game appears to be limited as to the number of maximum zombies that it can spawn at any one time, so you'll never actually be overwhelmed by them, and playing the game in this way cuts what the eShop describes as 8 hours worth of zombie massacring down to about an hour or so at most. That is of course if you can actually put up with the tedium of it all. You see, the format of every single level in the game is the same. You follow a single road to the end and fight a boss which, other than gaining some additional health, making it even more of a bullet sponge, doesn't actually change from one level to the next. You simply have to pepper it with bullets until it puts up a shield, making itself invincible, and then defeat the zombies it summons to make the shield disappear, and then you repeat this same process over and over until you eventually take it down. Level variety is also incredibly limited, and in fact it wasn't until level 5 where the game turned from day to night and these sewer systems were introduced that there was any variety at all, and even then it was just the same thing with the added frustration of dead ends in the sewers and a frame rate which absolutely shat its pants. Now, the only reason you're going to want to actually stop and kill some enemies is to obtain a set of more powerful weapons which are dropped at random when a zombie dies, and these weapons include SMGs, assault rifles and shotguns, and come in different rarities which affect the rate of fire, maximum ammo and supposedly the damage, though other than the shotguns there was actually very little difference from one gun to the next. You can also obtain grenades on the odd occasion, which is good for taking down groups of enemies but appears to have no effect on the boss, and in addition to the weapons, there are a bunch of temporary power-ups also dropped at random by enemies and found in the crates in the off-street alleyways. These power-ups provide things like boost to your health, stamina and attack speed, as well as a couple which block all damage for a few hits, but in all honesty these have very little impact when it comes to the gameplay, as you quickly regenerate health if you don't take damage for a couple of seconds, and your best option is to just get yourself a shotgun and blast away at the boss's head with it for 5 minutes. Now there is a little bit of variety when it comes to the non-boss enemies in the game, which include your basic shufflers, big hulking ones which charge at you, ones which explode or carry syringes containing poisonous gas, and ranged zombies which fire sound waves at you, but as I've already said, there's very little point in actually fighting any of these after you've got a couple of weapons and a decent amount of ammo, as this also carries over into the next level with you, and you can always grab these from the enemies that appear while you're actually fighting the boss. So as you can probably imagine, the gameplay experience provided by Pandemic Shooter is, to say the least, a lackluster one. Levels are a repetitive cycle of running past zombies and fighting bullet sponge bosses which don't change from one level to the next, and while the dialogue exchanged between the game's two characters does provide a little comical relief, at times even this feels forced and in fact a little bit cringeworthy. All in all, Pandemic Shooter could have actually been a decent game, but it's just not, and while you could argue its price point is a reflection of this and you shouldn't expect too much from a $5 game, I really can't recommend buying it even at that price, and in my opinion, this one can be left to fester with the other 100 or so zombie titles on the Switch, which just aren't worth your time or money. So visually then, Pandemic Shooter isn't the worst looking title on the Switch, and they've gone for a stylised cel shaded look with this one, allowing for a more comic book type look where the lower resolution textures aren't as noticeable. The zombies and environments all look decent, but the visual effects such as muzzle flash and the bullet impacts on the zombies are just a little bit underwhelming. On the audio side of things, the sound effects are okay for the most part, though again the weapons sound a little bit pathetic, having very little weight to them, and the voiceovers, whilst being the most polished aspect of the audio, are a little inconsistent with the volume, sometimes being too quiet, while other times it sounds like the voice actors are way too close to the mic.
Your stomach.
Oh, wait, I think I read something else.
That's right.
The music in the game is also barely noticeable beneath the cacophony of zombies, shooting and narration. So performance wise, the game actually holds up pretty well on the Switch, especially given the number of zombies which can be on screen at any one time. However, I don't believe it ever hits a stable 30 frames per second, and as I've already said, in the 5th level the frame rate tanks for no apparent reason. I've already covered off most of the actual issues with the game, but in addition to these, for some strange reason, a large proportion of the zombies are about 2 feet shorter than the main character, which does make hitting consistent headshots a bit of a chore. There's also the additional issue of respawns, leaving you with the ammo that you died with instead of saving your ammo state at the time, but to be honest this is a minor one in the grand scheme of things. When it comes down to it though, Pandemic Shooter just gets more things wrong than it does right. Despite its appearance, it's not a very exciting or enjoyable game in my opinion, and when it comes down to my own personal rating of the game, I'm going to be giving Pandemic Shooter 2 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a good first-person zombie game, I'd just suggest looking elsewhere. There are other budget options out there on the Switch, but if you're wanting a premium experience, you're likely going to have to pay a premium price. And so that about does it for this review of Pandemic Shooter on the Nintendo Switch. Hit that like button if you found this review helpful, and if you've already bought and played the game, let me know how you found it down in the comments section below. Consider subscribing if you watch my content regularly and want to support both me and the channel, but as always, thanks once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.